Hey everybody, welcome to week 7 material. This week we are going to focus in on modeling with references or modeling with image planes. So far, anytime we have modeled anything in Maya that's based on some sort of that has some sort of reference being used, then usually we would just turn to the internet and just swap back and forth from Maya to wherever the source image is in order to properly model based off a reference image. Well, this week we're going to talk about how to get those images into Maya itself and best practices for working with such images within the program. So to actually put an image in, I'm going to recommend first that you don't actually do it from perspective view. It's as easy as going to view, image plane, import image, but you don't want to do it in perspective view. You want to do it from an orthographic view. Actually, let's do it from perspective view first, just to see. So image plane, import image. By the way, it is looking for for whatever image I have in the source images folder of my project folder. So anytime you create a project, as we discussed in week 1, there is going to be a folder called source images that is made that you can call source images, or you can call them something else if you want to. I would recommend just keeping the names as they are. Anyway, anytime you want to import images into Maya, it's always going to look in that source images folder. So I would recommend any images that you find online that you want to use as reference images, you place in the source images folder. So I'm just going to go ahead and put something in there just so we can see what it looks like from the perspective view. Obviously, it is just everywhere at once, and in our orthographic view, it's just there. Our top view, it's over there, and our side view, it's there. This isn't helpful to us at all, placing the image in the perspective view. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and just undo that. And now I'm going to go into my orthographic views, because this is the views that you want to work with if you're placing images into the scene. So from the front view, I'm going to go to View again, and Image Plane again, and Import Image again. And I'm going to select the lava lamp again, and we're going to see how much better it looks this time. Press F to zoom in. How much better it looks this time when we place it in an orthographic view. As you can see, it's controlled, right size, something we can actually realistically work with at this point. Let's play with some settings. The image is good, but it's not ready to be worked with yet. First of all, let's actually select it. Just like with any primitive, we can move it, we can rotate it, and we can scale it. That's great, but of course, for an image, we don't really want to be doing that all that much. Really, the only thing we would want to be doing with it is moving it around. In this case, because objects will spawn in right at the center, it's probably a good idea to move our image to the back a bit. Namely, I would recommend -12 as the place to be for the majority of your images. Next thing we can play with is going to be here under Shapes, the alpha gain. Alpha gain controls how bright and see-through the image is. At 1, the image is completely solid. It is in its default state. But if we lower the value to, say, 0.5, then it becomes more transparent and see-through. And this will help as we look at our object in 360 degrees and see how it matches up with our reference image. So I personally like to play with, by the way, looking at it at 1, you can see that we can't even see through it. We can't even see through the image to the object behind it. So no, ideally, you want to have this at an alpha gain below the value of 1. So I like 0.25, but it can be whatever value you're most comfortable with. By the way, all of our movements here, if we take a look at this in the front view, the reason why you want to move this over to -12, not only is it good to get it out of the way from what you're from the primitives that you spawn in the center, but it's not affected in the front orthographic view. No matter how far back I move it, it still looks exactly the same in the front orthographic view, which is why you would want to move it, a decent distance to the back, like a -12, to get it out of the way in the perspective view, but have it remain unaffected in the front orthographic view, which I'll be switching to very, very often as I model here. And obviously from the top and the side, the image is practically invisible because it's only being shown in my front orthographic view. I can still select it if I marquee selected, but it's practically invisible. It's very out of the way working like this, so it's one of the best ways of working with images. Next thing that I want to do is actually expand a little bit more on this seeing the image only from one panel. Right now I can see it in my perspective view, in my front front orthographic view, which is fine. I've moved it out of the way in my perspective view. So honestly, when I work, this is good enough for me. I can start working like this as it is right now. But if you wanted the image to only show up in the front orthographic view because you placed it in the front orthographic view and you don't want it to show up in your perspective panel at all, then what we can do is select the image. We can go into our attribute editor and we can play around with the display here. We have currently in all views, but we can also have looking through camera. And now the image will only appear in the specific camera that we select. So it's only in the front camera right now, but we can make it appear only in the perspective camera if we want to, or only in the side, or only in the top. Obviously, these two are kind of useless right now because the image is a front-facing image. But if we wanted to, we could place it in the front or in the top. I'm going to put it at the front. Actually, no, I'm going to put it in all views. You can change this if you want to just front. If it's a front-facing image, or top if it's a top-down image, or side if it's a side view. I prefer having it in all views. I like being able to see my image here in the perspective view as well. But this is something that's dealer's choice. You can play around with this with these display values if you want to. Now, one of the dangers of working with images in Maya is the fact that we can accidentally select the images. So, you know, I want to select, let's say, a vertex. Oops, I accidentally select the image, and then I accidentally move the image around, right? That may be a situation you can come across. So we're going to continue doing some more setup work to ensure that we can no longer select the image. So once the image is in the position that you want it to be, we want to lock all of our movements for the image. And there's a couple of ways of doing that. Again, common thing with Maya, there's lots of ways of doing the same thing. So one of the ways we can prevent ourselves from accidentally moving the image once it's in place is by going back to our channel box and selecting essentially all of these channel box attributes and just locking them. And the visibility too, because I don't want to accidentally play around with this and have it disappear on me. I would rather it just stay there the entire time. So I'm going to lock that too. And now suddenly, if I were to select the image, you will see that the arrows are grayed out, the scale cubes are grayed out, and the rotate sphere is also grayed out. I can no longer do anything with this image. It is locked in place. That is one way of locking your image in place so you don't accidentally move it around after you've gone ahead and put it and set it up the way you wanted it to. I'm going to quickly just go through and unlock. And by the way, since we're here, I do also want to point out pretty quickly that you cannot modify and freeze your transformations for the image like you can with primitives or like you can with other basic objects in Maya. Images don't have the same kind of history information that the primitives that you're actively editing do in Maya, so you can't delete the history for these. Anyway, the other method of locking our image in place and making it so that we can no longer make it so that we can no longer accidentally move it around. With the image selected in our outliner or in our viewport, it doesn't matter, we can navigate over here to the bottom right to where it says layers, and we can create a layer from selected. We can also create an empty layer, but we can, since we have it selected already, we can just create a layer from the selected. I can name the layer by double-clicking on it and call this reference image. I can give it a display type if I want to, but I can change this in just a moment, so I'm not going to mess with this right now. I can also change the color just so I can make it clear to myself what this is. Can't have any spaces with the names that you put for layers. Let's see. Now that I've done that, I can play around with the visibility. I can make it visible or not visible, whatever is in my layer. The most important thing, however, is this third square right here. You have T and you have R. R turns your layer into a reference layer, meaning that now you can no longer select what's in that layer anymore if you have this R here. You can get rid of that just by clicking on it again, and now it's back to being a regular layer that you can play around with whatever is in there. But if you want to make it so that the image is unselectable and it's locked into place, then you change this third cube into an R. And now suddenly you can't, suddenly once you unclick off of it and try to click it again, you can no longer do so. You can still select from the outliner, but from the viewport you can no longer accidentally select the image as you work. which is great because that means you can't accidentally move it or rotate it or scale it or delete it or whatever. And if you want to add something to a layer, then essentially all you have to do is just select it, then right click on the layer, and then you just have add selected objects. And now this cube is also part of my my reference layer. I can empty the layer, and now no objects are part of my layer anymore. So this image is now its own thing. This cube is now its own thing, but I want the image to be part of the layer. So I'm going to select the image, then I'm going to right click, I'm going to add to selected object. Going back, however, I'm going to delete the layer and do this one more time, except this time I'm just going to say create empty layer. Now I'm going to again call this reference underscore image. And again, I'll make this blue now. Why not? I'll select the thing that I want for this layer, which is going to be this image. Right click on the layer name and just say add selected objects. And just make it a reference image. So it can no longer be selected. And again, I could add the cube in here if I wanted to. Add selected objects, then I can remove selected objects. So, you know, plenty of things that you can do with layers. It's not something I use all that often, to be honest. If I were to want to lock in my my image, then I would probably do it the first way, where I just lock it in the channel box right here. But this, again, is just yet another tool for your toolbox, something that you can use if you'd like, the layers here that Maya has available. Anyway, regardless of how you do it, once the image is in place and you have locked it so that you can no longer accidentally select it, now you're ready to actually use it for modeling. And essentially, what I like to do for this is enter my orthographic view, or you know, the front, the top, the side, whichever way the image happens to be facing. I like to change my shading over to wireframe on shaded and X-ray. I like to give my cube a few more subdivisions to start off with. I'll start deleting them as I go, but I do like to start with a little bit more than I need in the beginning. And then I just start modeling. So yeah, here we go. Let's make this lava lab real quick. I enabled wireframe on shade in the front, but I also want to do it in the perspective. Do that. I don't need the X-ray in the perspective, just in the front. Next thing I need, well, this is a lava lamp, so it's actually going to look the same from the front and the side. So it's actually a good idea to also place the image on the side, the exact same image. And set this up real fast now that we know how. Going to the X to -12. I'm going to add my selected image there so it can no longer be played with accidentally. Let's also add this back in, because I believe I emptied it accidentally in between cuts. There we go. It can't be selected anymore. Next, wireframe on shaded, X-ray. Let's get rid of the grid, because we don't really need that when we're working with reference images. I can keep it in the perspective, though, and the top doesn't matter, because I'm not going to work from the top. Okay. Next, actually, I don't need the width or the height geometry, or the depth geometry. I just need height geometry is what I really need. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with modeling here. Not overly concerned with lining it up with the image perfectly. I just want to get it close enough. That's how you should work with images. It's usually not going to be possible to match up an image perfectly as you model, but you want to make your own decisions as you go and just, you know, fit it in as best as possible while retaining the spirit of the image of the shape that is given to you via the reference. Not concerned about perfectly matching up with the image. Just want to be, you know, good enough, close enough. There we go. Modeling with reference images. You will notice some of the things that I did as I was actually going through the process of modeling. I went ahead and activated a wireframe on shading in both my side and front orthographic views, because that's where the images were. I went ahead and also activated X-ray so I can see through them to the image behind. I didn't find myself overly concerned with matching the image 100% perfectly. I found myself more concerned with just being close enough and making my own decisions along the way in order to maintain the in order to retain the overall shape of the image, but make it my, basically make it my own thing. Since I have the opportunity, though, I'm very, very quickly going to do that. There we go. Somewhat a flatter top there, I just noticed. I wanted to fix that up. Anyway, made my own decisions along the way, worked with the image, but I didn't, concern myself with making it one-to-one exactly the image. I just wanted to make it, close enough while making my own decisions along the way, doing best practices to ensure that I'm not accidentally selecting the image, that when I'm working my orthographic view, I can see through my model to the image behind me so that I have a clear reference to work with. That's all there really is to modeling with the reference images. It's just doing what we did before, but now we have the added benefit of being able to see an image here in the Maya scene with us and hide it when we're done. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Next time, we're going to do it again with something a little bit more complicated. Bye-bye.